them like gladiators? Well, if you don't, then this video isn't for you. But for the rest of us, we can't get enough of these ancient warriors. And today, we'll meet one of the greatest of them all, Spartacus. Hi everyone, I'm your host, here with 10-Minute History. Today we'll explore the life and legacy of Spartacus, the gladiator who led a slave revolt against Rome. But before we begin our tale, we have a favor to ask you. Please subscribe so you never miss an exciting episode. And while you're at it, consider giving us a like as well. Now, let's jump in. The year is 111 BC, and Spartacus is a young man living in Thrace, which is modern-day Bulgaria. His father was a Thracian prince, but his mother was a Roman woman. So Spartacus had dual citizenship. Now, usually if you were a prince, that would mean your life would be pretty good. In fact, most people would probably envy you. But Spartacus was captured by pirates when he was young and sold into slavery. He might have been a prince, but now he was property. We aren't sure what Spartacus did before he became a gladiator, but it's believed that he was either a soldier or a miner. Not exactly a prince's life, right? But Spartacus didn't take his fate lying down. He trained hard and studied everything he could about gladiators. And eventually, he got his chance to fight. His first match was in the city of Beroia, and as soon as he entered the arena, everyone knew Spartacus was no ordinary slave. This wasn't just a job for him. This was personal. And from the moment he unsheathed his sword, you could tell he meant business. It's said that Spartacus fought ferociously, perhaps even bloodlust, but he won his battles and became quite popular. But Spartacus also hated what he was doing. Every time he killed another person in the arena, a part of him died inside. Eventually, Spartacus made friends with one of the other gladiators named Crassus. Together, they hatched a plan to escape. All they needed was a distraction, and they knew just how to get one. Now, when you're a gladiator, you have to stay in top fighting shape. That means you have to eat well and often. So every day, after training, they would go to the mess hall to eat with their fellow gladiators. One night, while they were eating, Crixus slipped some wine into the food of Lentulus, who was the head gladiator. After he ate the food, Lentulus fell fast asleep. This was exactly what the two friends were hoping for. They snuck out of the barracks and made their way to the docks. Their goal was to steal a ship and sail away from the island. However, as they made their way through the city, more and more gladiators joined them, until there were over 70 men strong. They might have been outnumbered, but they were ready to fight. The group took over a few ships and set sail for Sicily. But after arriving, they quickly realized that they didn't know where to go. So they sailed back to the coast of Italy and settled in a small village called Here, Spartacus and his men lived among the common folk. They worked as farmers and blacksmiths, and they even fought alongside the local army. Spartacus was becoming a legend. And before long, word spread of his bravery and skill in battle. Soon, slaves from all over southern Italy began to hear about Spartacus. They flocked to him in Venafrum and joined his band of revolutionaries. Before long, Spartacus was leading an army of over 10,000 men. It was time to take the fight directly to Rome. As Spartacus and his army marched across Italy, they freed every slave they came across. This caused quite a stir in Rome. At first, the Romans thought it was a joke, but when they realized what was happening, they were furious. They sent General Marcus Licinius Crassus to stop Spartacus. The two met in a small town called Crassus and his legionnaires were confident that they would crush the slave revolt once and for all. They were ready to fight, but they weren't prepared for what happened next. In the Battle of Grumentum, Spartacus and his army faced off against Rome's finest soldiers. You might think that this would be a fair fight, but the gladiators' army had a secret weapon: chariots. Up until this point, Spartacus and his men had avoided chariot-based armies. They knew that chariots were too powerful and dangerous to face head-on, but Spartacus was willing to risk it all. He used speed and maneuverability to get behind the Roman lines and cut off their supplies. The Romans couldn't believe it. No one had ever attacked them this way. It was brilliant, and it worked. Crassus's army retreated in defeat. This victory gave Spartacus and his men confidence. They continued their march north, freeing slaves and taking land. Rome was outraged. Everyone was talking about the gladiator who dared to defy the might of Rome. Politicians were afraid to speak about the situation because they were afraid of being associated with the violence. Even the Senate wouldn't discuss it. The only ones who wanted to talk about it were the people whose land Spartacus and his army had taken. They begged the Senate for help. Finally, the politicians were convinced to speak up. The next general they chose was Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Unlike Crassus, Sulla knew how to fight Spartacus. He chased the gladiators' army across Italy for 3 years. Finally, in 72 BC, the two met in the north, near the Silarus River. Once again, Spartacus and his men were outnumbered, but they were ready to fight. For 3 days, the armies clashed in the Battle of the Silarus. When the dust had settled, Spartacus was gone. According to one story, he was killed in battle. Another says he was executed by his own people for planning to overthrow the government. Either way, after his death, Rome crushed the rebellion and executed many of the gladiators' army. Only a few escaped and lived to tell the tale. So why should you care about Spartacus? Well, here's why. He was a legend in his own time. He showed people that one man could make a difference. He inspired hope in the hopeless, and for that, he will never be forgotten. Rome built 2 statues in his honor, one in the Forum Magnum and another in the Piazza Navona. Both are gone today. But during the Renaissance, people remembered Spartacus and made paintings of him. Over the years, many people have played Spartacus in movies. Most recently, he was portrayed by Andy Whitfield in Spartacus, Blood and Sand. But Spartacus wasn't just a legendary warrior. He was a thinker, too. He understood the power of propaganda. While he was marching across Italy, he had a team of scribes recording his victories. They would then post the records in public places. Anyone who read those posts knew that Spartacus was a hero. He wasn't a monster who was destroying Rome. He was a liberator who was freeing slaves. And thanks to him, people started to question whether slavery was right or wrong. This was a new idea in Roman society. Normally, slaves were considered property. You couldn't argue with that. But Spartacus changed all of that. He gave slaves a reason to believe in something bigger than themselves. After the slave revolt ended, Rome tried to put down any mention of Spartacus. They destroyed buildings in his honor and even erased his name from history books. But they couldn't erase what he stood for. People still whispered stories of Spartacus, the gladiator who challenged Rome. And even though he was gone, his spirit lived on in the hearts of the oppressed. In the end, Spartacus didn't just lead a slave revolt. He sparked a revolution that would change Rome forever. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please remember to subscribe. If you want to learn more about Spartacus, check out the resources. And remember, history doesn't always have to be complicated. It can be fun, exciting, and full of adventure. Just remember the lessons of the past and apply them to your life today. We'll see you next time.